So far, you have learned how to handle exceptions, but you can also raise or throw exceptions in your own code. Let me show you an example. So I'm going to define a function. Let's call it calculate x factor. This function takes age and simply returns 10 divided by age. Now, in this example, age cannot be 0 or less. So we can have an if statement here. If age is less than or equal to 0, we can raise an exception. So we use the raise statement and then specify the type of our exception. So far, you have seen a few types like value error, zero division error, and so on. In Python, we have various kinds of built-in exceptions. If you go to Google and search for Python 3 built-in exceptions, on this page, we can see all the built-in exceptions in Python and what they're used for. Down the bottom of this page, you can see the complete list of these exceptions. So as you can see here, we have a hierarchy, like a parent-child kind of relationship. At the very top, we have base exception. Below that, we have a few children. One of them is exception. Below exception, we have arithmetic error. And below that, we have zero division error. So these are the built-in exceptions in Python, and they're sufficient for most cases. But you can also define your own exception types. It's not something that you do that often, but it is something that you can do for sure. In order to do that, you have to learn about classes, and that's the topic for the next section. Back to our code. In this case, we want to raise a value error exception. In parentheses, we can specify an error message, like age cannot be 0 or less. So we have this function that raises or throws an exception if we give it an invalid argument. Somewhere else in our program, we're going to use this function. So we call calculate x factor and pass, let's say, -1. Now, when we run this program, we can see our program crashed with a value error exception. And here's the message: age cannot be 0 or less. Obviously, this happened because we didn't handle exceptions here properly, so we didn't have a try block. To fix this issue, let's add a try block with an except clause of type value error. Let's give this exception object a name like error. And here we can simply print this error. Now let's run the program one more time. So here's our error message, and our program didn't crash. Beautiful. So this is how you can raise exceptions in your code. But this is not something that I advise you to do. I only explained it here because you will see this in other people's code. As I will show you in the next lecture, raising exceptions is costly. So in this example, instead of raising an exception here and then handling it below this function, we could take a different approach that would result in better performance. That's what I'm going to show you in the next lecture.